Hey guys, Wade Bexley here. It's the Credit and Collections podcast, which this is our third podcast, and we have Kym Nitschke here from Nitschke Nancarrow Accountants, and also I think you've done several podcasts, 67, 68, maybe more.
70
now.
Yeah.
So we have a very experienced podcaster here. So, but we're going to talk about cash flow, credit, collections, and the accounting firm that you currently run, and how that's how you see the market out there with your clients and how they may be handling their cash flow issues at the moment. All right, so Kym, tell us a little bit about your business currently.
I run a boring accounting firm. Got 6 staff.
I don't think it's that boring. If you're at 70 podcasts and you've interviewed every client possible.
Yeah, 70 podcasts. That's been a really good journey. Like, I went out, bought the Zoom equipment that you can see on the desk, and just did it as a bit of a... I was actually doing it with another guy, but then I was having so much fun myself. I just wanted to do it myself. So it's been really good, but it's been an exciting journey. It's a marketing tool, I guess. So I meet with clients and I sit down with them, have a chat. But
has it been difficult to get clients to talk to you initially? Or, I mean, now that you're 70 into it, I mean, we're here on our third Credit and Collections podcast. I've told you a little bit before off camera and off the audio that it's been a little bit difficult.
Yeah, there's it's you got to, I guess the whole social media thing, it's frustrating to actually grow it because it has its own life, and a number of people that you want to get on it that are going to be amazing guests either say no at the start because they don't want to share their ideas. And also, I've recorded a couple of episodes which just ended up on the cutting room floor. Yeah. You know, one because the guy that I interviewed was, that happened in 2 episodes.
He didn't
actually
feel comfortable after.
No. It made no sense what he was talking about.
Okay, so it wasn't worth sharing.
But I did another one with an artist, and it was amazing. And he's had a meteoric rise to fame, but all the people that he talked about as part of his journey, they've gone nowhere. So he felt really bad about that.
Okay.
And also he painted a painting, and it was a bizarre situation. And when I drilled down on it, the truth came out, but he'd been telling everyone that it had sort of happened in a different way. Like,
okay.
So, yeah. So
his story that he portrayed was different than actually what had happened.
So he did amazing things with this painting. It won awards and events and all that. But it was like he'd told everyone that it was as a result of XYZ, but in actual fact, when I pressed him on it, he'd just taken a photo of something on the television and painted it.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, so it unravelled something.
All that truth came out.
Yeah, okay.
And he just rang me the next day and said, can you just delete it? It's waterfalls, but I've still got it sitting on my hard drive, but I can't publish it.
No. Okay.
But the podcast thing, I just want to drill down on it because it's been an amazing journey insofar as I have been so scared of public speaking all my life and storytelling, and podcast has been the best tool in the world to develop my storytelling skills.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
That's great.
But
that's also when I met you, and you mentioned you did a podcast, and first accountant that I'd come across that was actually doing it. Maybe there's others out there that I haven't come across, but
I don't think there are. I think
you're doing a great job. So well done.
Well, and my listener base is growing, and I mean, I have so much fun doing it that I'd do it if it was just me and my mum listening to it.
Yeah.
But the audience is growing, and that excites me because they must like things that I like, and they must like listening to me unpack stories and drill down deep on customers and all of that. So it's been awesome fun.
Excellent. Very good. So your accounting firm, you said it's boring. I mean, that's probably why being in credit and collections and having the podcast only get to 3 or 4 at this stage is because maybe the topic is that boring. But initially it's boring. But yeah, as you say, when we drill down and we talk about different things, that opens up stories that people, our audience, may be interested in listening to.
Exactly. I think if I talked about accounting and, sections of the accounting standards, everyone would be fast asleep. So we just gloss over them and talk about people and personalities and feelings and drill down all of that. And that's really fascinating no matter what it is. So I think that, credit and collections, I mean, while on the face of it, that might seem a subject that no one wants to talk about. I think that
or they're affected by it, but they don't want to talk about it.
And I've learned everyone's got money problems.
Yeah.
No matter.
It doesn't matter how big or small.
Yes. From the packers to the man on the street.
Yeah, that's right.
Everyone's affected.
It's like oxygen. Well, it's the second closest thing.
It is. Yeah. And that's why we're in our job, because people value it so highly and they're happy to pay us one way or another to get themselves financially on track.
Yeah. Excellent. And so with some of the businesses that you deal with, do they talk to you about cash flow issues? I'm sure they do.
All the time.
Is that a big part of your consulting role? Or is it a topic that you do like to talk about with your clients?
Yeah.
If you can get to that part of their business?
It's not something that they bring up straight away when we're having a meeting, but...
It's just like when you're talking to an individual, they don't first of all tell you if they're having any issues around any personal debt that they may be having.
Yeah.
It's something you have to get through.
Exactly.
And you've got to feel comfortable and you've got to trust that person to be able to do that.
Yeah. And if you ask people on the face of it, 9 times out of 10 they'll say they're fine, but when you actually drill down, we've all got a pebble in our shoe sort of thing. Debt, credit card debt, collections, running the business, cash flow, all of that is a massive concern for most business owners and entrepreneurs. We all get excited by the sales and the lifestyle, and I think Instagram and Facebook are
a big contributor.
Contributor to that. Like, people are living beyond their means, big time.
Yeah, and then the afterpays and the
afterpays. It's getting easier.
Yeah, that's right.
And I'm finding in my career that in my accounting sector, finance, financial planning, retirement plan, is getting bigger and bigger and more important. So, just let's have a look at the mortgage broking bit of it. It's becoming a massive part of my business because everyone's so far in debt.
Yeah,
and to be able to save them, some sort of component on their interest rate is a huge windfall for them. And if you're in that psyche, then
so you will get into that much detail to look at mortgages for your clients to help them.
Absolutely.
Reduce an interest rate, get a better deal for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if this is probably
that's great that you could actually have that conversation with your client to get.
Yeah, I think it's a really important part of it because I guess the accountants traditionally just sit down and think of doing tax, but that's just one part of the puzzle.
Yeah.
All these other things contribute to their cash flow, and I guess the biggest question that I get in cash flow is like, okay, doctor or business owner Joe Smith, you've made $1 million this year, and you have to pay tax of X, Y, Z, and they'll turn around and go, "Well, where's it all gone?"
Because is it in the bank? No, I've paid this, I've paid that. That's right.
Yeah, so then that's another conversation. It's like basically that's their way of saying, "I've got a cash flow issue here. I haven't provided for it." You got to go back and work out where it's all gone.
And that's in the projections and the budgeting. So not many business owners or sole traders look at those figures on a daily, weekly, monthly basis.
1 to 5% of my clients would have a budget.
Yeah,
which is terrible.
And these days with the accounting software, you can actually create that yourself quite simply. Really? You could download a report within 5 minutes. I could do that right here with my app.
It is so easy.
That's the technology's there.
Absolutely.
So we were talking about that before we started recording around education. So the education to use the tools, that needs to be a big part
lacking.
of it. Yeah. I don't know if that's going to solve the problem. I think we were talking about that before, but I think that's a part to getting people to do it. And educating themselves is, I suppose, listening to podcasts, reading books, going along to training and seminars. Are people doing that enough these days? Do you see the business owners out there, self-developing and helping themselves do that?
No.
Well, they don't talk to you about that side of things?
I don't think they're doing enough of it.
No. The time they spend on Facebook and Instagram, they could be learning these extra skills.
Exactly.
Possibly.
Exactly. Yeah. I'd be all for them doing more education and learning, but we're probably partly to blame that they rely on us to do it for them or to train them or teach them.
Yeah. And then when there's a problem, they give you a call and you've already learnt that. Can you solve it for me?
Yeah, and often it's too late.
Yeah.
You know, if we get in, I mean, the problem that you prevent preventatively as a result of, you know, being actively involved at the start and planning out the year and having all those meetings, I think that they are really worthwhile, and clients are in a much better position at the end of the year if you're sitting down with them and doing ongoing reports, comparing, you know, and not enough people do this because it costs money, but if you...
And also the time factor,
absolutely.
Isn't it? Because you're busy out there, like you say, if you're a small business and you've got to go get sales to, you know, feed the operation. Is that you've got to either have that appointment with a new prospect or sit down with your accountant to discuss cash flow that is already in the pipeline. That's what the business owner would weigh up. I'm saying that from my own experience of which one's more important. The business owner or myself thinks I need to be out there seeing that new customer because that's going to bring in future money for my business.
But it's
Whereas
not the case.
am I going to talk to my accountant and talk about what's already there? It does need to be important. And how do you get that message across to your clients to say, hey, that's more important at the moment, when both are just equally important?
Yeah, I agree. If
it's a difficult one, I'm assuming.
Well, I think if you take a client's sales and then you take off their expenses and then you take off their tax and their personal spending, often those expenses, personal and business, are more than they're earning.
Yep.
You know, and we've got clever ways to fudge the numbers and plug the gaps so that it actually looks okay. You know, and that might be using a credit card, or that might be using sales from next year to pay off the credit card from last year.
Yeah.
You know, so you're always lagging behind. So I guess what I was trying to say before is, if you earn another $500,000 in your business and you've got those fundamental issues behind the scenes, earning more income is not going to solve your problem.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you're just going to have a bigger
that's
expense
right.
roll and
just
bigger. That's right.
Deferring it. So I think that there's got to be a balance. I think it's, you know, really important. If you don't have any sales, you're not going to have any customers, you're not going to have a business. But then also, what I'm learning is it's not how much you earn, it's how much you spend.
Yeah, that's right. So it doesn't matter if you're earning $1 million a year or you like you say, you're even if you're on Centrelink payments, you can still budget.
Yeah.
Or you should budget, I should say.
Everyone.
That's right.
And you know, you hear these stories, the classic ones are where, you know, mum gets dad's paycheck, and I know this is being a bit stereotypical, but she sits down on the lunchroom floor with 20 envelopes and carves the pay up into... I mean, that's a beautiful, simple way of budgeting.
Yeah. But these days you can do that with your bank account.
You can.
You can automatically pay off whatever account you need, save some money. I think more and more people are starting to use that process, which, you know, will work, but they don't look at the projection of what's going to happen in a year's time, what's going to happen in 2 years' time with that money and where it's going to go. And that's, you know, then they actually have a goal to work towards and achieve, and that makes a big difference on them concentrating on what they do weekly with their money. I think if it's just like a small business, if you've got the goal or you're out there, or as a business person, what your goals are, if you're working towards those, then you'll pay attention to those numbers. But most people don't have that goal. The goal is to make sure they've got enough food for the week. They spend more time on their shopping list and what they're going to buy than they do what's going to be in 6 months or 12 months' time. And I'm saying that from a perspective of the debtors that we, in the collections business that we're chasing. If they're not even budgeting for a $200 or $300 account that we are following up that may be 30 or 60 days behind, then if they haven't seen that coming, what are they concentrating on? And I think it's just that day-to-day survival mode. It's not, you know, what am I going to do in 6 months' time or 12 months' time with my cash? Am I going to invest it? Am I going to, buy that first house? It's just, how am I going to make sure that I can buy the groceries for the week? Even though their income would be very similar to somebody that is doing that.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Like, because so you're talking about investing and...
well, that takes it a bit further, but if you bring it back from that, you've really got to sort out how you're going to pay your bills first.
Yeah, you are.
But if you've got an idea of you might invest in the future, you would then concentrate on how you're going to budget your everyday expenses so that you can achieve that investment goal you may have. But I think a lot of people are lacking that goal down the track. Do you find that, or is that something you would encourage to your clients to say, hey, what is your goal down the track to invest in, property, or to invest in a business down the track, or increase your share portfolio? Is that something you talk to them about, and then how are they going to achieve that?
Yeah, I do have those conversations with them every day, and I've got my standard answers. But and
let's say we're talking to somebody that hasn't even thought about those things, and they're currently behind in their just current expenses. They may have a mortgage, or they may be renting. Where do you start with that conversation, right? It's difficult, right?
I know,
because there's a huge amount of debt out there, and there's a huge amount of people in the future that aren't even going to be able to afford to buy their first home because they're buying stuff that they can't afford. They're using the afterpays and the zip pays, so just for non-items that aren't going to appreciate in value. They depreciate as soon as you walk out the shop or it gets delivered to your door these days.
Yes, I understand exactly what you're saying. I'm probably a little bit too impatient to sit down and map all of that out, because really you're talking sort of 5-year time frame, aren't you?
Yeah, you've got to be patient. It's not like you and I as a business owners, we want to see result in a month's time. But we've probably been doing this for quite some time, but people that, let's say, are just entering the workforce or have been doing it for 5 years and haven't really got their stuff sorted and aren't the go-getter entrepreneurial type, but they just have the income that they receive, but they're spending it quicker and faster than they're actually bringing it in, and they're not even thinking about bringing in new money. They're just stuck with the salary that they're going to get, and there's no more income that's coming, but they're already spending above that. They're the people out there that are finding it difficult at the moment.
Yeah, they need to break out of that stranglehold that they're in, either by getting a pay rise, borrowing some money off of their parents to get a deposit for a house. Those people really need their boss almost to hold their hand, or someone like me, although, I'm not putting my hand up saying that I want a lot of people at that point. I mean, no. But I often help them out because they're friends, or they've come to me to mentor them. But
you would have people that you would refer
absolutely
to that would be able to look after that particular demographic of people that we're talking about. Right up through to the people you work with today. But you have dealt with customers or individuals like that.
But the key for me is living on less than you earn, period, because if you don't do that, you're never going to win, and you can't. There's nothing left. You're always going to be behind. So that's the start. Then locking that surplus away in an account that you can't touch. While that just rolls off the tongue, I think that is incredibly important, and so many people
are not putting money into an account they can't touch.
That's right.
Yeah.
And
apart from super.
Well, super's good. I mean, I think that's been so underrated, and it's such a powerful tool, and I'm guilty of it. Like, I've got $16,000 in my super fund, and I projected it out the other day on what I should have, and I should have $600,000.
Yeah.
So I'm miles behind on that, and I've always blindly said to my customers, don't worry about super. But I'm actually realising that was a big mistake on my behalf, and that
you went down the property.
Yeah.
See, I've got a very similar story as well around that. It's like, no, super's probably not going to be around in the future for me. So I'm going to invest it in other areas, business and property. So I have a small amount of super as well. And I think it's more important than even I thought of as well.
But what I'm finding is, so I've done really well in my property investing, to the point where I could retire now. And that's incredible. But I'm still worried about super, because I've done all the projections, and when I get to 65, my model relies on me selling all my properties.
Yeah.
And I don't want to do that. I've regretted every Honda motorbike that I've sold, so I'm not selling anymore. Okay. I've got 5. And I've regretted every property that I've sold. Yeah. So I'm going to take all the ones that I've got, which is now 6,
and don't want
to the grave with me. But my retirement's dependent on me selling them. So what I'm trying to work out is, how do I build up my superannuation balance now, so that when I retire, I can have my
You got
cake
the
and eat it
choice.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
I can.
right.
I can.
If you want to, you will.
That's
If you
right.
don't.
So it's a bit of a problem because when you do the projections on your property growth, it all stops as soon as you sell it, and you lose a massive chunk in tax. So that model, while it works and you get rapid growth, it's high risk. I think there's a lot of benefit in having that regular amount that goes into super that you put away that you don't even realise that you're contributing. So what I'm doing now is I'm trying to resurrect my superannuation balance and working out. And I'm just starting with, I've got the Barefoot Investor out, and I've looked at the pension thresholds, and I think I'm going to have way more than I will ever have to qualify for the pension. But as a fallback, if the world comes crashing down and the finance sector, crashes down around our ears, and all I'm left with is my super, well, I want to have as a minimum what the maximum is that you can have without affecting your pension.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
So I'm shooting for that goal. I used to be $1 million, but I've lowered it.
So that it works if that happens. Yeah, it's great. Yeah.
Because if you go divorced or you go bankrupt, you lose your business, your super is protected.
Yeah.
All my property investments aren't. And I'm not worried about them at all. But as a safety emergency plan, you've always got to have a contingency in the back of your mind.
XYZ plan, that's right. It's not the ABC plan.
So it's not too late.
Yeah.
And I'm
But it's that regular putting the money away, regardless if it's super or it's an account that you can't touch. I think that's I read something about that a long time ago as well, and it's just the matter of putting it away and forgetting about it, because this could be a small amount to us for the week. It's nothing, but add it up over 15, 20 years.
Yeah,
that's right. It becomes $6, $7, $8, $1 million.
Yeah, I've worked out I've got to put $2,000 a month away. And when I pay all my super for my staff, that's way more than that.
Yeah,
I pay it for them, but I don't pay it for me.
That's right.
It's wrong.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think a lot of business owners are in that.
I think it's
category.
a huge trap because, we're all self-employed and the government's flexed the rules on it. But the self-employed guys, when it comes to retirement, they're the ones missing out.
Yeah.
The guy who's been working for the government all of his life and he's paid off his home loan and he's got a massive pile of super. He's going to be better off than all these entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Miles.
And a lot less stress. That's right. So just moving back to the cash flow of a typical business, when you're looking at that type of business, what is it? The systems in place that they have that causes them not to have a good, healthy cash flow? Is that generally the reason why there might be cash flow issues in a business? I think it's sort of what we touched on a little bit earlier. Or is it the processes inside the business, or is it the people running those processes in a business? Let's say what type of business? A manufacturing business, for example. And they are exporting and selling around the country on credit, for example, and their receivables are, 60, 90 day plus. I think the average at the moment is around the 60 days for any business for most accounts to be paid. So if you look into that detail, what generally causes that from your perspective?
In terms of the bills they're paying or them falling
the
behind?
cash flow they're bringing in, the bills they're paying, the whole.
Yeah, okay. I think that there's a bit of a disparity between the collections and the payments. So, I've realised that my accountancy firm is running sort of like a bank. Yeah. The people always owe me, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I just carry that and I never get upset with them, but I pay all my debts within 7 days. So I think most businesses are like that.
That's right.
And that is a huge cash impact initially on the business. I think with the manufacturing businesses, I don't think they're diligent enough in chasing up the people that owe them money. They just send out a bill and they are happy with getting paid at 60 to 90 days.
Even though their trading terms could be the 7 days.
Yeah, and I think with tools like Xero now, I had my tractor repaired and it was an $800 bill, and I was getting pre-warnings the bill was coming out. I was getting warnings about that its due date was approaching, and it was like I just paid the bill in the end on the due date just to get this guy out of my life.
Yeah, and it was an automatic set on
Yes.
Xero, right? So he wasn't even thinking about that on a daily basis.
No.
It was the system doing it.
Exactly. And I think introducing more of that is gold for businesses.
It's interesting to I was with a group of bookkeepers a week ago, and they have a handful of clients each, and they were saying that at least 50% of them aren't using a cloud-based software still.
It's terrible.
I couldn't believe that that's the so they're those automated reminding tools. So they're probably smaller businesses, but they're not using them. So they're still spreadsheets and handwritten invoices and like quite archaic. So I think there's a big opportunity out there for businesses to still adapt to cloud-based technology, which from my perspective, I adopted it 6-7 years ago. So I'm like, what else is out there? What's new? But this is still new to those businesses out there.
Oh, I think it's a given. I think that there's also a tendency for business owners to have their head in the sand. I don't think that they're across the numbers as much as they should be. Definitely not enough of doing monthly accounts, and even appointing a quasi board to sit down and review businesses' books every month, I think is absolute gold, because they're going to ask the questions that you sometimes avoid or put off. And that's a really bad thing in business, I think, as well. Not like living in this hope that focusing on all these sales that are coming in the pipeline down the track may not eventuate, and you're almost spending the money before you've got it in the door, So I think that that it's a really good idea to outsource all your bookkeeping to a bookkeeper.
Yeah.
And then sitting down, more importantly, with them once a month, even if you don't have a board, you just sit down with a bookkeeper and say, right, how do we go? And saying to the bookkeeper, without even thinking, do a budget.
Yeah.
And the budget can be so damn easy. It's just like taking last year's figures and adding 10%.
Yeah.
And saying, well, how do we go this year compared to that?
And can we reduce some of the expenses we spent last year, or some of them dropping off because of new equipment that we bought and that's already been paid off? Those type of things will be in there.
I'm amazed at how much you can learn from the figures. Like if I sit down, turn the phones off, close the door, lock myself in the room, and I do a deep dive on a client's books on how much I learn about their business, how much I can tell the business owner from what the numbers are telling me, what are the trends, what are the expenses that are blowing out, where are the sales coming from, where are the profits that are, like 80% of the profits are coming from 20% of your clients, get more of them.
Yeah.
All of that sort of stuff that people just gloss over. And
the businesses that do return 20 and 50% growth each year are the ones that are doing that.
Absolutely.
Very well, right?
Yeah.
And the ones that aren't are the ones that are just floating along.
Exactly. But the small business owner, they're running the thing as lean as they can, and they're cutting all these corners. And what the biggest mistake that you see time and time again is when things are tight, the last person they pay is the tax office.
Yep.
So you see these, and the banks are onto it now. When you apply for a loan, they want to see integrated client accounts, which show how much GST do you owe the government. And because the ATO, being the ATO, is sort of lagged in their response, you can go to 3 months without paying GST bills, and just getting reminders from the ATO.
Yeah.
So everyone uses them as a creditor, and that builds up in the background if the business is suffering. They use that like a bit of a...
Oh, well, there's another bank, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But obviously they're charging interest these days, and they are getting on
They're
top
getting
of it
much
as
more
well.
onto it.
They
And
will be
they'll-
following up for smaller accounts these days.
Yes.
$900 the other day, I read.
Really?
Yeah, chasing some, yeah. So those days may be over.
That's right.
And so then businesses are going to have to adapt and change quickly.
Yeah.
Probably merging and selling off. And is there too many small businesses, especially in an Adelaide perspective? I think there's...
I think that there's too many in the, the old traditional type businesses like the retail, the restaurants, the coffee shops, the shops that's selling a product. I think we need more technology.
Yeah.
I love it that Elon Musk, he was questioned on, he's just doing SpaceX for the money. And he turned around and said, no, if I wanted to make more money, I'd do another internet startup.
Yeah, that's right.
And I
That's
think
a good response for sure.
It was great.
Yeah.
And I love that because I think that's where it's at. Like these little apps, like I found one, Life 360 the other day.
Okay.
It's worth $860 million, and it just tracks people in your family and where they are located with GPS on their phone. You know, it's so
something simple.
Absolutely.
Well, the concept is maybe not creating the technology, but
yeah. So I think that if people are out there with a business and there's a problem that they can solve with technology, they should take the time out to research on what it would cost to develop an app, because chances are everyone else is experiencing that problem as well.
yeah, that's right. But on that, talking about the small business owner that still hasn't adapted to the cloud-based technology or the app.
We've got to get on the cloud first before we can get them to develop an app.
That's right. So I was just thinking, how do we go from that to that?
I think that there's a massive, they need, if that small business has not got on the cloud yet, a big problem.
But they're still scared of the cloud. Have you had those conversations with people?
I don't even bother with them anymore.
But those people are still out there with pretty decent businesses.
I don't entertain it. I mean, I used to have the customers who say, I'm so worried about using internet banking. I refuse to use it. I always go into, and I honestly sit down and I say with them, look, these days, if there's a fraud that occurs on your bank account, the bank will cover it.
That's right.
So provided you don't give your password out or write it on your back of your mobile phone or something crazy.
Or pay somebody incorrectly, and you're not getting the money back.
Yeah, or get your receptionist to pay all the bills blindly.
Yeah, that's right.
Which happens all the time, and they've got a pokey problem. Yeah. Provided you've got all the checks and balances in place, I don't have a problem at all with using all of those technology-based apps. And I think that they just save so much time. And I find that...
And also another way to put it is that the small business that has IT and protects their computer systems and stuff like that, who they're paying to do that is a relatively small cost. And the sophistication of that IT provider isn't as good as what the bank has or the app has or the cloud technology. The infrastructure and the systems of IT and the sophistication that they have are much better than what you and I as a small business owner can do. So if you think about it from that perspective, then you should trust the bank or the app or whatever you're using.
So I think those people that don't have the cloud base, they need someone like you and me to grab them by the hand and drag them up to technology. Yeah. Step one, get them onto the cloud. And then if they're not doing that, I'd imagine there's a whole lot of other skeletons in the closets with their business that they're not taking advantage of. So you got to fast forward and get them up to speed first on all of that. Then once they're motoring along, they've got budgets, their business is making money, and this is probably going to take 1 to 2 years, unfortunately. Yeah. Then you can start having the conversations about, let's take the business to the next level. Let's not just think of Australia as our market. Let's tap into the US, and that'll blow their mind. And you do that with technology, and it's so accessible.
And so that goes back to that goal setting, that planning. Because if they didn't have a 3 or 4 year goal or plan, they're probably not going to go through that 1 to 2 years of pain readjusting their business, right? Because that's right. Change and discomfort for them.
They've got to want to do it.
Yeah.
There's no
but you've got to find a reason why.
That's right. Some people, and I've sat down with people before and they've said, I don't need to make any more money. And I was like, really? I find that hard to understand, but I totally I totally get it.
You get it in the end, but
there are a lot of entrepreneurs like you and I who are really ambitious and highly motivated. They're the ones that need they're the ones that are happy to pay for the advice and go on the journey with
readjust their business and go, yep, this is where I'm heading. And because they're always thinking about those goals.
Yeah,
and how they're going to achieve it, and finding the right people to do that with. So, what made you decide to get into your own business? Obviously, an accountant by trade.
Yeah, I used to work at a Big Four firm, and I think the stats show that 1 in 24 people becomes a partner. And I sort of woke up one day and thought, I'm actually going nowhere here. I love learning, and I realised that my manager, in a lot of areas, knew less than me, and that was because I was reading books and getting skilled up on all sorts of things, and I was sort of teaching him different ideas and concepts and all of that. So I thought, I've got to get out of here because I'm going backwards. Yeah. And then, so I just decided to start with my family and friends and work from home. And that worked really well. And then as word gets out, everyone's having problems with their accountant. And
it evolved from that perspective?
Yeah. And then I bought 2 accountancy practices. Yeah. And that's been really good, because I mainly buy accountancy practices for the real estate, which is sort of reverse engineering.
Okay.
Because often There's older guys out there, and they've got no succession plan in place, and they're looking for people like me to come in and buy them out and look after their customers. And the number one priority for them is
to make sure the customers are looked after,
and
because they've had them for
exactly,
a long time.
and they don't want to let them down. They're part of family, and often the cleverer accountants, in my opinion, have bought their properties, and they've had them for 20 or 30 years, and they're happy to offload them
as well.
Okay, and usually you get them at a fair price, which is what you want, and usually they run down. So I come in and value add. I've got my builder's license, so I'll renovate them, and then either operate out of them or flip them.
Okay,
so that works well. But I love accounting. I was good at maths. It can be seen as being a boring sort of career, but I don't really find it like that as well. I said it was boring because as soon as you say you're an accountant at a party, everyone goes, "Oh my God, how boring." And
I get the same as a debt collector. It's the same sort of thing.
But in actual fact, I think that I'm fortunate to have a personality, and that sets me apart from half of the other accountants out there. So people find it easy to have a conversation with me. I've always been passionate about investing and making money, and I think that that's a skill that a lot of accountants lack. So a lot of people come to me for that
type
bonus
of
advice.
Yeah.
I'm a financial planner as well and a mortgage broker. So having a foot in all of those conversations enables you to have conversations. Having a foot in all of those camps enables you to have a meaningful, value-adding conversation with all of the business people who are seeking that sort of advice.
Yeah, and they generally will want to know about every aspect.
They're all interrelated.
That's right.
If you're applying for a loan, well, the first thing the bank looks at are your financials. So if you can have some insight into how to present those financials to a bank in the most positive manner, and this is getting more important now with the Royal Commission than ever before, that is a big plus to a client, because most accountants say, here's your financials, take them to your bank. Whereas I will be more of like, let's have a look at those financials. Is there anything in there that the bank is going to see as a red flag? Can we change it? Can we, or more importantly, like moving forward, next year, what can we do in the business that's going to make you a more attractive lend for a bank? That sort of thing. And can I save money on your home loan rates? Can I save money on your business loan? Now I've got people fortunately, in high places in the banks where I can flick them a deal and they can come back within 24, 48 hours and say, yeah, we can save a client 20 grand on that. Yeah. And then we're talking $4 to $10 million in debt.
Yeah.
But other brokers who don't have the critical mass of the accounting firm that I've got don't get a look in the door.
Yeah.
They'll come back with a quote to that person, which will be another 0.5% higher than mine. And then they'll try to, so it all feeds off each other. Accounting is a great industry with finance, as we were talking about before.
And it is the essence of any business or personal income. So, without that, it's not possible for a business to thrive or an individual to thrive financially.
Yeah, exactly.
So it can't be that boring.
No,
that's where I was going with that.
It's not boring at all. I just say that as a
because I know what you're talking about as the typical accountant that you speak to or you meet potentially at a networking function or you get introduced to, and yes, you can take away that impression from that person.
I know. It's almost like when you sit down at the table, you think, "Oh God, I've drawn the crow. I'm sitting alongside an accountant," and a lot of them, still wearing the cardigans, and their life is,
and all they want to do is look at numbers, and they don't really want to interact with people. So having the entrepreneurial accountant is a great add value for clients and people that you meet along the way.
Why did the auditor cross the road? Because he did last year.
That's right. Yeah.
And that is typical of a lot of guys, and they just can't see the big picture. Yeah. And those guys, I think, they're fantastic, and some of them are amazing. They will work the tax calculation out to the nearest cent without using any tools, but basically do it in their head or with a calculator.
Which is amazing in a
sense. It is, but that's limited in how far you can take that.
That's right. Exactly. So what's one of your best experiences with a business and potentially turning it around or solving an issue for it? Or do you have one of those that sort of stand out and say, that's why I'm in this business?
Yeah.
For an outcome based rather than a financial?
there's a number of situations where that happens, but I guess the first one that comes to mind is I remember sitting down with this guy was a plumber, and he was working for a big plumbing organisation, and he was like in charge of 30 staff. He was really worried about leaving. It took him about 6 months. He came to me and said, I'm thinking about setting up my own business. So I was there from day one. We set him up, and then he resigned after 6 months. Didn't really take any customers from the existing business, but grew his business through sheer hard work. And he was clever. He got great sign writing and really just good branding and imaging and all that. And he grew to like top 10 plumber in South Australia in about 5 years. So watching that whole journey was fantastic. Incredible, and upset a lot of people along the way, but it was just really nice to be able to sit down and go through the numbers each year and give him feedback and give him advice. And he would ring me all the time. I'd be at Dan Murphy's, take a phone call from him sitting in the car park, and it'd just be like, oh, hey, look, this has come up, what do I do? So I love those sorts of relationships, and that's really good. And I felt that I was an integral part of every part of that growth journey. He'd run every decision past me, and I would do it as if it was my own. And I don't know everything, but the fortunate thing is in my situation, I see what works and what doesn't work. So often I'll be able to make an informed decision as an independent third party on what the next step is for someone in business. Yeah. So that was a great story. I've got doctors like that as well who are just so busy and caught up in what they're doing. They don't have any spare time, and I'll go through and re-quote all of their car insurance premiums, stuff like that, and save them $5,000, and then get them new home loans with a better bank, which and their relationship's been fractured, and introduce them to a great new bank manager and save them heaps of money on that. And then I've even with a friend of mine who's a surgeon, I actually went and re-quoted all of their professional indemnity insurance policies. Like, I didn't know anything about it, but I just Googled it, found the top 5 providers in Australia, rang them up, had a conversation, and presented 5 quotes to him. No one had ever done that sort of stuff before, but I love getting
into it. Yeah, that's good.
And then there's where people are making lots of money, time poor.
There's opportunities to
There's
help
so
them.
much fat in the system where you can come in and trim it and just add so much value to them, and also just talk to them about
changing too much of what they're doing. That's right.
And just tweaking it. And like often they're buying properties for the wrong reasons, and so you say, well, I'd cut that one out of the portfolio and I'd add this one in. Okay. And so I like doing all of that. And there's another intensivist who's a client as well. He came to me and he said, I want to get into property. And then I had this property that came up, and I tapped him on the shoulder and I said, look, I reckon that you should have a look at this one. He's bought it, liked it, drove past it. I was fundamental in every step along the journey. And now, like just last week, a developer knocked on the door and said, oh, this property such and such, would you be interested in selling it? I said, well, it's not mine. But, but relaying that conversation to that guy who'd sort of taken a bit of a step of faith to buy that property, and then to say, look,
somebody's already interested in it.
20% premium on what you paid. That's a great conversation to have.
Yeah, fantastic.
And it was really not too hard to do.
No, okay. And obviously spotting those opportunities is something you like to do as well for yourself. You're doing that yourself. You're doing that for clients. So that's obviously a big point of difference for your firm. What you do.
Yeah. I mean, I love real estate. I love investing in the stock market. All of that stuff I can have really good conversation with clients about, and look at where they're currently at and say, I think there's a better way of doing it than the way that you're doing it. Do you want me to help? Yeah. And that's really good. And I like being at the cutting edge with all that sort of, so in investing at the moment, the latest craze is ETFs. So knowing which ones are the top performing ones both in Australia and in the States.
ETFs, what are they?
Exchange traded funds.
Exchange traded funds. Okay.
Yeah, like back in the old days, everyone would have a stockbroker and ring him up and say, can you give me 5 stocks to have a look at, or can you invest my problem?
So they're not doing that now?
No. Well, Warren Buffett's come out and he said, he put up $1 million pledge to say that if any stockbroker could outperform the S&P 500 index, he would pay them $1 million.
Okay.
And no one has been able to outperform it.
Okay.
He's still got his $1 million.
When did he put that up?
I think it was
A couple of years ago, was
a
it?
couple of years ago.
Okay.
So that's been a bit of a mantra for me, saying, well, this guy who's at one point the wealthiest guy in the world, and when he dies, he said that his wife is going to put all of her money into that index as well. So you can buy exchange-traded funds which map that index. So effectively, you get someone's money and you place it in the stock market. I'm not giving advice here. I'm just saying that this is the trend that's happening.
Yeah.
So those sorts of things are really exciting to me, to understand how to do that and what it's going to cost. And a lot of clients aren't up to speed with all of that.
No. Well,
introducing them to all of that is a huge benefit to them.
yeah. And is that generally a conversation, a meeting? How do you...
Oh, it's a series of meetings.
Yeah.
Because there's so much involved these days. You know, knowing your client and knowing exactly where they are and whether it's the right fit for them.
Yeah.
You know,
are you finding it hard to meet with clients in this day and age for meetings and stuff when they're busy? How do you manage that?
I'm very flexible. Like, so, you know, with a lot of my medical clients, I'll meet them in the hospital, in their office, or at the coffee shop. Yep. And
so
I know
you'll go see your client.
Yeah,
it's not the traditional style of come to my office.
No,
I'm not leaving. I'm the accountant that doesn't leave.
Really,
you come to me.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, that's...
Like for my, I've got a mate who's a neurosurgeon. I know that we can have a steak sandwich at a little restaurant around the corner from his hospital on Tuesdays at 1 o'clock.
Because he's going to be having lunch there. That's right. So that's a good spot.
Exactly.
That's right.
So if I need a document signed, or
that's where you're going to be. That's
if I need to talk to him about something that he won't understand in an email, or if I need to have a difficult conversation with him about something, I'll go and take time out of my day to meet with him there.
Yeah.
And that's
so it's
just
that
what
flexibility.
Works. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's the key to business these days, is being able to do that.
It is.
Yeah. So have any of your, I'm sure over the period of time you've been in business, has any of your clients gone into bankruptcy?
All the time.
Yeah. And so
I've become an expert on it.
Okay. So what conversations do you try and have to turn around those bankruptcies? Because you're seeing the numbers and seeing the figures, if they've been cloud-based and sharing them with you, you would see the writing on the wall before those things are going to happen.
Yeah, it doesn't... sorry, let me just rewind a sec and unpack that, because I haven't actually seen it where I've been actively involved in day-to-day management, budgets and all of that.
No,
okay?
Because then you probably would have been able to redirect them and turn it around.
Exactly. It's more a case of someone knows that I've got a bit of a niche in that area, and they've heard of a person who's in trouble, and they've said, oh, Kym helped out in this situation with his other business, go and talk to him. So they'll come and see me, and it'll be like crisis point. They've received a statutory demand, usually from the ATO. They owe $500,000 in unpaid taxes with all the penalties and all of that. So I've got a system now where I can't solve it entirely, but I can make the best out of that.
You minimise it.
Yeah, so I can liquidate their company and maybe end up saving their house. Yeah. That's a good outcome in my books.
Yeah, so they can start again.
Yeah.
That's why we live in Australia, and that's why, bankruptcy applies.
Exactly.
Right.
So not
everyone would take that view
from,
especially if they're a creditor that's unpaid from this bankruptcy.
Exactly.
They're going to be very upset with this business or individual.
Oh, it happens all the time.
That's right.
It's not easy. It's an awful outcome. Everyone
but it is
loses,
part of business, right?
But it's part of business, and we all make mistakes. And unfortunately, those business owners, for one reason or another, have not seen the writing on the wall and have left it to the last minute. And it's not pleasant. But often it's not their fault either. Like they might... I've seen this a couple of times where I had a bricklaying client who we had to liquidate their company, but they had two massive... accounts receivable accounts that
weren't paid,
went into liquidation.
Yeah.
So they'd outlaid all the money, done the right thing, done the job, and then just didn't get paid. Yeah. So that's a massive hole in their business cash flow. Yeah. And often they can't recover from that.
No. Yeah, that's right. So, and they can't see that happening either.
No.
They can do some credit checking and they can put some security in place, but if the company goes into liquidation and doesn't have any funds to pay out, that's just what's going to happen to that business, isn't it? Unless they took some other measures as they were providing those accounts, probably getting paid up front or along the way, or they could have potentially seen the writing on the wall from that larger company going under. But some do happen overnight. We've had 2 builders in South Australia go under in the last couple of months, which has left a large amount of unsecured creditors with hundreds of thousands of dollars, some a couple of million. And those companies aren't getting their money back. They might get a few cents in the dollar. But what I've noticed on that credit list is that there is a spread of debt. So I think most of those businesses will survive. But the sole trader, the plumber or that owed 30 or 50 grand, they're going to take a big hit, especially if they're a 1 or 2 man show. So, but they wouldn't have seen that coming either.
No, and you can't really plan for that.
No. In our office, in the collections, we do see accounts from multiple clients for one builder over time. So we will see the writing on the wall earlier. So sometimes our clients can give us a call, or potential clients, and say, "Hey, is there any issues with this builder?" Yeah, we've had 2 or 3 unpaid accounts being sent to our office. This is before it goes down the track of them going into liquidation or whatever. So we generally do see the writing on the wall within our business, but that information needs to be asked for. So the clients need to call us, or potential clients, if they're going to do business with somebody. We can potentially give them that information beforehand.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's useful.
That as long as our clients are the ones that are trading with those businesses. So, yeah. What else so what's the future of, we'll wrap it up on that. What's the next 6 to 12 months of your business, probably? Because I know you're a very ambitious person. So if I ask you that question, it depends how far you want to look ahead, right? So what's the next 6 to 12 months?
Well, I want to double the size of my business in the next 3 years.
3 years.
So,
that's
and
by acquisition of another.
No, that'll all be organic growth.
Oh, okay.
But there's also, within that, I want to build up the automatic. Like, it just occurred to me in the last couple of weeks that the importance of having recurring income. So if you look at the big 4 banks, their business model is amazing. I've got the book on my bedside table at home about the Westpac story, which is 200 years old. And it's a massive book. You can hardly lift the thing up.
Okay,
but it's such an interesting story of the bank.
How it evolved.
And it's the minutes of the meeting that they first had 200 years ago and how people... it's incredible. Yeah. But I like to sort of think that my accountancy practice is very similar to the banking model. The banking is brilliant because I go in there and I borrow $1 million for a house. They do all the paperwork, it's all signed up, and then it's basically set and forget. Yeah. So you're building this, you've got this machine out the back of the bank that's just spitting out money. Every month when I make my mortgage repayment, they get their percentage, $1,000 on it or whatever per month. And it just, so I think that my accounting model will go from less of an hourly rate to more agreeing with clients up front and then putting them on monthly retainers, and also building up the income that I make from financial planning, which is effectively another sort of auto recurring income where you're managing people's money and you're having regular meetings, but it's not based so much on an hourly rate. Yeah. And also with
based on the outcome of the funds.
That's right. Yeah. And also with the mortgage broking, the same thing is, as a mortgage broker, you can effectively be a quasi bank model where you get a loan approved and then you get an ongoing trail from it. Yeah. So I want to tweak my business so I'm getting more of that, and that's more healthy if I go to sell my business down the track. But it also means that if I'm in holidays in Nice or whatever and I don't feel like getting out of bed that day, the money's still rolling in. Yeah. So, but I think that that's important for every business. We all should be thinking about how do we make more of our income automated.
Yeah. So I'm thinking now, as you're saying that, an IT business is very similar to that, isn't it? Where they set up a managed IT service and it might require 3 or 4 hours, depending on the size of the business, per week, day, month, and then obviously any additional things that happen outside of that, then that additional time is put into it. But they know that there's a reoccurring income depending on the amount of computers that are in that business. Something like that. I don't know.
I think every business can be, even like a pool cleaner. Okay. You know, he can just say, I'm going to clean your pool, it's $100 a month.
Yeah.
And
then it gets done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and that's where I think businesses need to be doing. And then as a business owner, well, you know, if the pool blocks and you're out there cleaning filters and all of that, well, you lose money that month. But then hopefully the next month, if you do a good job,
maintenance required.
That's right.
Yeah.
And there's an incentive there to...
or preventative.
That's right.
Yeah, that's where. Yeah,
that's where I'm going.
Yeah, so that's the model.
Yeah. So and my accountancy practice, I sold my accountancy practice in 2003 and moved to London. Biggest mistake of my life, I reckon, because I sold all my customers and I had non-compete clauses and all of that. And when I came back, it was so much harder to build it up again. But I've managed to do that. But I'll never sell my accountancy practice. I'll take it with me to the grave.
Yeah.
You know, I'll as I'm getting older and I'm able to less keep up with my clients' demands, I'll get it running under management. But I'll still go in as a consultant and keep my toe in the water.
You still want to be involved and see
it's
how...
part of my, you know, it's just part of something that I love doing.
Yeah.
And I never want to give that up.
Fantastic. Very good. All right. Well, thanks for being on the show, the third Credit and Collections podcast. Hopefully there's some ideas out there that you can take away. And yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks, Wade.
Appreciate it. Cheers.